Welcome to episode 2. We are looking at training and apprenticeships on this 4-part series of The Opinion Piece. Last week we looked at the apprenticeship overview, salaries, how we get the right people in the industry. This episode, I think this is going to be the best one. And the reason I'm saying that is what needs to be in an apprenticeship. Peter Bully's back, my guest. He obviously did his apprenticeship way back. We've all seen the youngsters coming in, and we'll talk about Peter's training school in another episode. But Peter, I think the first thing, and this is a big passion of you and me, 92% of construction workers at some stage will be self-employed. Now, some people like myself love it. Some people would rather have, the security of working for a firm. But with that high number, why do you think we've got nothing in the apprenticeship of how to run your own business?
Well, firstly, the people that are running the apprenticeship scheme, a lot of them haven't been in business themselves. That's the problem. In other words, the instructors and the civil servants that set the whole thing up haven't been in business. And one of the problems with especially small builders is that people feel they don't trust them. They're builders, we've got a bad builder story. I mean, it's a communist conversation piece. So I feel very strongly that what they need to have in the apprenticeship is actual training in running a business. Now, I always say to my students, the key is get your skills in running the business first, once you've got some basic building skills, but start with small jobs. Because you can't take on a big job and at the same time learn how to do accounts, how to market yourself, how to do operations, customer relations, all these things that every other business has to do, we've got to do as well, because we're a microorganism of a big business. I mean, all the big construction companies most of them started as tradespeople. I mean, Sir Robert McAlpine, my old employer, he was a bricklayer. And look at them now. But you see, you've got to have a business mindset as well as your trade. And one of the things I have is called EDAD, which is educate, to delegate, to accumulate, to dominate. So you might not want to do accounts, but you've got to know about accounts, even if you're going to employ an accountant. You see, you've got to have do some basic, even if it's in a week's course, setting out. I mean, they do nothing, very little on setting out. And then, if you can't set out, and pricing, estimating, wow, there's a big topic. They guess it, most of them. Oh, well, look at that job, well, that's worth 50 grand. And the main reason why builders have a bad name is because they undercharge. People cannot believe that. But when you undercharge, you've got no commitment to the job, you've got no commitment to your client, because you're not making any money. That's the end.
It's funny you say that. The first job I priced on my own, I remember it, big detached house. Again, I went too big too early. I met the couple that owned it and the architect. He gave me a piece of A4. There was some hand-drawn drawings, but he did use a ruler. And then on the back, there was a couple of lines of structural counts written by hand. Walked around the house, went in the van, turned the piece of paper over. And this is obviously before phones and social media. Started pricing it and didn't have a clue. There's no way I should have been sitting there given that responsibility. Now, I know it's different now because you've got Facebook groups, you've got social media, you've got estimating companies. But even so, as you say, we need the basic training because it's one of the big reasons so many are going bust. We don't know how to run a company.
Exactly. I couldn't agree more.
So there's so much. I've written down some points. You mentioned some of them. We've talked about in previous conversations about how well-rounded as a person you are as a tradesperson that works for themselves. Accounting, marketing, insurance, employment, contracts, health and safety, CDM regs, vans, leasing or buying. People don't give us the credit.
No.
Because if you look at what we need to do to run a business, say, kitchen extensions.
Yeah. Well, I've always used a standard formula that when you price, see yourself as a service. When you deliver, see yourself as a product. And that always works. Because you see, advice is chargeable, but not in building. Advice is free. Estimating is free. You can spend, if you were estimating on, say, the Shard, you could spend £250,000 on a tender and lose it. And we only start to get money when we produce something physical.
Do you think we should charge for estimate? I've always charged.
Well,
so
I think
the
that's
reason
brilliant.
Technically I used to, so what I used to do, if I came to your house, I'd have the meeting, and they say, right, we want a kitchen extension, we want the back of the house taken out. And I say, look, give or take, it's going to be X. If you want me to come back, having got proper drawings, structural calcs, building regs, I will price it accurately to the penny, but that will cost you.
Well, I think that's marvellous.
A lot of our time wasters, because a lot of them will just get a price and give it to their mate.
Yeah.
Do you think as an industry we should go, right?
Well, yes, we should charge, but I think we should be taught in college how to price. I mean, I use a critical path method. It's not the only method. I mean, you've got the Spons architectural estimator and all these different things, but the critical path method works for small jobs. It's basing the job up into a series of tasks and then having a matrix between each task and all the different aspects, you know, materials, hire, labour, blah, blah, in like a crossword. And that works very well for the small builder. But when you get into big things, or especially if you're doing repetitious work, then you do things maybe by the square metre or whatever. But I think they should be trained at college in estimating, in setting out, in accountancy, just basic, just bookkeeping, just basic bookkeeping. We still have to audit our accounts every so often. But you know, and apart from anything else, I mean, you drop all your bills to an accountant, and you wonder why you've got a £25,000 charge, because he's not going to do that for nothing.
Yeah.
He charges for his time. We don't charge until we've produced something. That's the difference.
There's an awful lot of the social media groups that a lot of the trades are on. You look at the average small residential company.
Yeah.
Say they're turning over, I don't know, low six figures, 300, 400, 500 grand a year. The work that's involved that's not getting any pay. And I think that's where we're becoming unstuck. So a big thing for me, and I'll be honest, I've never found a good one. It's quite ambiguous. I think people disagree. Contracts. To me, we need an industry standard contract.
Yes.
That's clear, not Latin, Greek, legal beagle speak that no one understands, but it 50% protects the contractor, the company, and 50% protects the homeowner. Because I've used contracts and I've had awful clients take me to court, pull the contract to piece, and I lose. And you look at that and you do think to yourself, how do we have protection as an industry? Do you think there's a good contract? JCT to me needs updating. It's however old.
Yeah. I think we definitely should have contracts, and really get the customer to sign them as well. I think that's very important to have the. You see, it's all about the specification, because when two builders are asked to give an estimate, you've got to be very, very clear what the spec is, you know, between different builders, because they give different estimates, and the problem is that the customer just looks at the price. And especially if it's on a small job, they're not going to understand. So what we've got to train apprentices to do is to prepare a contract and prepare a specification very precisely. I always say loads of detail in the spec, but no detail on the individual pricing. One price at the bottom. As I say, when you buy a washing machine, you don't go into the shop and say, how much is the tumble dryer? How much was the market? You buy it as a kit, as a whole unit. So that's where it's a product. But when we estimate, we've got to see ourselves as a service, because services value their time. When you have a product, they don't. And of course, with products, people are always looking for a discount. But they don't look for, when you go to see your consultant surgeon, you don't, and he says, I want £300 for a minute, or whatever it is, 10 minutes. You don't, look, I'll tell you what I'll do, I'll give you 200. It doesn't happen, because it's a service. And that's how builders have got to think. They're
That's
a service.
A really good point.
Service as well as a product. It's one of the few industries that is both a service and a product.
I think the big thing for me, you mentioned spec documents. You go and tender for a job, and you get the call, oh, you were 30 grand more. It's like, well, what are you comparing me to? Because how many jobs do you look at? Actually, well, we're not sure if we're going to have a new boiler, but you know, we might. One company puts it in, all new pipe work, underfloor heating rads. The other one just puts a provisional sum in or leaves it out. So the spec doc is part of what we need to have in apprenticeships, because at the moment it's kind of a bit of a Wild West saloon, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, we are a profession. We're not a, you know, this. I mean, the term cowboy. They never talk about cowboy accountants, do they? You know, or cowboy doctors. cowboy, like, you know, we've got a Stetson on and our pistols. I mean, it's this terrible image we have in society, and that's got to change. And when it changes, then people will be pleased they're getting better quality builders.
I think it's us being more proud of what we do as well.
Absolutely.
You know, I used to walk into the multi-million-pound houses made to feel like rubbish just because he worked in a investment bank and his bonus each year was 7 figures. What difference does that make? But, you know, we're creating your dream home and we were exceptionally proud of it. But, you know, I think, as you say, as an industry, you look at other countries, we've mentioned Holland, Germany, Australasia, North America, same level as doctors, same level as solicitors.
I mean, they always say, don't they, there's two things that every business has to do. It has to solve problems and add value. There is no industry that does that more than building when it works. They solve people's problems and they add value at the same time. Because building is an investment, as well as somewhere to live and somewhere to rent out and somewhere to work. It's an investment as well. Building and land has a value, and that value is increased as the builder improves it. But also, it's solving the customer's problems. There's hardly any industries that do that, both of them, you know?
I think once we get the image, as Peter said, of the industry change, we can attract more people and better people. Next episode is big part of what Peter's been doing for a long time, is training and upskilling. Probably what you can't see on camera is I'm sitting here, can barely move. My back went last week, probably bending over, coming out of the ground for too many years. What can you do as a trade or in the industry when you are a little bit older? Next week, Peter and I are going to talk about the training and upskilling and the many opportunities a lot of us trades don't really know.